the Postbank has been experiencing technical issues this week, paying out beneficiaries or paying out grants to beneficiaries of the 350 Social Relief of Distress Grant. This comes on the back of amendments that were made recently by the Social Development Department to the qualification criteria for the grant, which is expected to see fewer people actually being approved for payouts. Well, in response, civil society group, the Institute for Economic Justice, has now launched court action against the government. For more on this, let's speak to Senior Research Associate with the Institute, Dr. Kelle Howson. Dr. Howson, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the program. So we've had another problem in the last 48 hours or so with the Postbank payouts of these 350 grants. We're told that's now been addressed, but in reality, the beneficiaries of this particular grant have had a lot of stop-start problems, haven't they?
That's right, yes. If I could just correct you on one point, that the Institute for Economic Justice has not launched court action, but we are supporting the court action of our coalition partner, the Black Sash, which is trying to address some of these issues with the 350 Rand grant, and the exact that support will take is yet to be announced. But you're right. So the government has recently announced that they will be raising the means testing threshold, the income eligibility threshold for people to qualify for the social relief assistance. They're lifting that threshold from 350 Rand to the food poverty line, which is 624 Rand. So this is a very welcome development. It's a step in the right direction, the direction that we've been advocating for. But what we've been asking is that income eligibility threshold is actually raised to the upper bound poverty line, because there are millions of people in South Africa who are living in poverty, who don't have any other means of survival, of assistance, and of social protection. And we're not trying to kind of criticize for the sake of it. I mean, we are in support of this development, but we also highlight that there are a number of other reasons why people who desperately need this assistance aren't able to access it. And those go to the non-delivery crisis around the SRD grant, which you identify. And that's beyond the issue of the means testing threshold.
Let's unpack further then some of the issues why, or reasons I should say, why we're seeing fewer people actually receiving this 350 grant. You've also noted in your work that at some level, people, while poor and desperately in need of financial assistance, whatever the amount, are starting to give up on the system. That's what we're hearing from our partners. That's what we're hearing from beneficiaries, that they're just disillusioned, demoralized. They don't have faith that they're going to be able to access this grant anymore. Part of that comes from the fact that the grant was transitioned to a new administrative system between the months of March and April after the national state of disaster ended. And that new system included a whole lot of barriers to people being able to actually apply. We saw the number of applications between March and April drop by about half. Some of that is due to this demoralization, as you say. Some of it is due to a confusing application form which asks people for unnecessary information, asks people potentially leading questions, and also the fact that the application system is now only available online. So you need to have access to a device, you need to have connectivity in order to apply for the grant. It's also only available in English. And we acknowledge that this grant has been put into place very rapidly in response to emergency conditions. But we're just simply saying it's not good enough that a grant that is supposed to target the most vulnerable actually ends up excluding the most vulnerable because of these exclusionary systems. So what we've seen now, since the grant has started to be paid again in June, because remember there were 2 months in which people just didn't receive the money that they were entitled to. Now, comparing June to March, we see that the approval rate for people who actually did manage to apply is 20%. And a lot of that is due to this application form and other barriers, as well as the lowered means
You know, Dr. Howson, we've got a bit of a buzz on our connection to you, but I'm able to hear you, so I'm hoping that everyone else listening to our conversation is also able to follow. It's not unbearable. I just wanted to bring it to your attention so that should we lose connection, if that's where it's likely to go, it doesn't come as a surprise. But let's talk about the grant as a test run, as some have suggested, for the possibility of a basic income grant. Given the issues that we've had in the 2 years plus since its introduction, what does it tell us about how prepared we would be to manage a basic income grant program successfully?
The issues that we've seen with this means-tested grant actually are a very strong argument introducing a universal basic income grant. What we're seeing here in this case really corresponds with all of the international evidence about means-testing targeting, trying to target social assistance at small, limited groups of beneficiaries, always ends up excluding the most vulnerable. It often results in the kind of administrative issues that we're seeing, and the cost of administering this grant is high. It's a very complicated bureaucratic procedure. So we think that it's a very strong argument in favour of a UBIG, a universal basic income grant that everybody in the country is eligible for, that's set at a level that can actually help people meet their needs for basic food as well as basic necessities. And that grant can be targeted or can benefit the most vulnerable through progressive financing measures which ensure that the wealthiest pay a net contribution in tax whilst the poorest receive a net benefit in terms of the basic income.
Dr. Kelle Howson from the Institute for Economic Justice, good to have your time. Thank you so much for being on the program today.